Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning into today's session on Baking with Chef Dino. Um, Welcome, everyone, and I would like to introduce our chef or our facilitator for today's session. We have Dinesh. He is well called and known as Dino. He's an undergrad with advanced diploma in pastry arts. He always loved baking and started baking and cooking from a very young age. I know he's still young though. He's overly enthusiastic about God and the ministry that he does. He's a part time content creator on Instagram. He's done diploma courses on Christian counseling, on interior designing, and on fine arts is his hobby. And he loves swimming. He is an avid traveler, very well known personality, very passionate on what he does, very lively person. It is so fun to have him around. He's also a very good presenter, talkative person. So it's always been a joy connecting with him. And thank you so much, Dino, for doing this for us.
You're
And
welcome.
we would like to welcome you to give us more tips on baking with COVID and with limited restaurants. We would love to hear on what you would suggest us on crisp recipes and also tips on how to bake various stuff. Over to you.
Good. Hi, guys. I'm so glad to be joining you guys today. So I'm going to show you guys one of my favorite recipes. Super easy to make at your home. And I think this is something that if you're a beginner in baking and if you're very enthusiastic about it, it's something that would really like you really love this recipe. It has very limited ingredients. So to start off with this, I went in advance and prepped all of my ingredients here. So as you can see over here, these are the ingredients I prepped in advance. So we have simple ingredients that you can find in the house. It may look look very fancy, but these are very you can find this all these ingredients in your fridge, in your pantry. So over here we have some flour. You can use atta. We have eggs. I already cracked them in advance and just whisked them because I didn't want to have stuff lying around. And I made some buttermilk. So to make buttermilk, you basically take a bit of milk and you add curd and you mix it together. And that's your buttermilk. And then I have some sugar, which I blended in the mixer. And then I have some butter. You can use salted butter, and then you can just cut off the salt that you use in the recipe, or you can use just unsalted butter you can find in the shops. And then you have bananas. Now, if you have bananas that are older and riper like this is what will give your recipe and your banana bread a lot of flavor. So if it is gone black, there's something that you would want to use because it's really delicious. And so yeah, this is and all of these ingredients I will put them on the Red Rope Moment page, or you can tune into my Instagram and my Facebook, and I'll give you the recipe right there in cups and in ounces and in grams, so that you guys can copy the same recipe at home. But before we start with the basic with the banana bread, let's finish. I thought I'll make a crumble to go on top with it. So something very similar, something that's very easy to find at your house, at your area, at your in your house. So we have some sugar, flour, and some butter. So these ingredients I'm using over here are very similar, and they're all in the same quantities. So this is 80 grams, the flour is 80 grams, and the sugar is 80 grams. So for this recipe, this is a very simple recipe. You just basically take your dump everything in a bowl. It's as easy as that. And over here, I have a silicone spatula. If you don't have any of these tools at home, it's okay. You can just use a wooden spoon for this. I use silicone spatula because it's just easier. And over here, I have some butter. So the butter is in room temperature, and everything that I've used today is in room temperature because it's so important that the ingredients incorporate with each other. And room temperature is the only, like, the best temperature for incorporation and get the best results. So I'm going to quickly just mix this together. Nothing too fancy, just basically you want to get the flour, the sugar, and the butter incorporated. So I'm basically making a crumble. So this goes on top of the banana bread. It gives crunch, it gives flavor, and it gives a little bit of extra. Now, I know that it might seem like an overly, what do you say, fancy dessert, and it is, but it has the basic ingredients that you can find. And yeah, see, this is it, the crumble. It's ready. All of the ingredients are um, incorporated. I'm also going to be adding a pinch of salt, which I have over here, just to give it a little bit of flavor. So I put some salt in there. And yeah, basically you want it to be crumbly like this. Lumps is the best thing. Like if you have lumps in it, don't worry. That's how it should look, like a crumble. And I'm going to put this on a baking tray, and I'm going to put it in the oven for around 10 minutes. So that all of it's basically like basically a cookie dough. Yeah, and I'm going to spread this out. Yeah, and then I'm going to put this in the oven for about 8 to 10 minutes. So I'm going to go put this in the oven and I'll be right back. Okay. So one baking tip I learned very early on my baking was to have all your ingredients prepped before you start, so that you don't have any ingredient left out, and you're not. It's basically easy baking when it comes to baking if you have all your ingredients ready. It's just everything in a check with all the ingredients in your recipe book, and then have them ready out like that, and it will really just help you make your baking stress free, and it will actually be very successful. um, and tip number two was, like I said in the beginning, is to definitely have all your ingredients in room temperature, because when you have all of your ingredients in room temperature, there's always all of your ingredients will incorporate well with each other, and so that you don't end up with lumps in your batter, you don't end up with a flat cake, you don't end up with over domed cakes. And so that is why to have all your ingredients in room temperature is the best. And eggs, you put them out in the night, or your butter, you put them out in the night. Don't store your bananas in the fridge, store them outside. So I'm going to start with the cake batter itself. Um, for this, you basically have some butter over here, and I measured everything again in advance, and I got them all ready so that it's easy, stress-free baking, and I don't also miss out on ingredients. So I'm going to put the butter in, and I'm going to apologize in advance because we're going to have a lot of noise in terms of this machine working. So I am going to stop talking while the machine is working, and so that you guys can hear clearly. So now if you don't have one of these mixers at home, I actually have a standard mixer right over there, which is extremely professional baking right there. But you can use what I have, a standard mix.
We didn't see that. Show that
Oh,
again.
okay. Sure. So over there in the corner, that's my professional beater. So
Okay.
for when I have larger orders, that's what I use. So if you don't have what I have right here, like if you don't have one of those, and if you don't have this, go ahead, use a fork, use a whisk, use a fork, a whisk, a wooden spoon. Those are things that you can find in your pantry that you can use. And then it's very easy. There's no much mistakes for, there's no space for mistakes. It's very forgiving the recipe. Yeah, it's very easy. So I have my butter. I'm gonna apologize in advance for the noise. So, when it comes to beating your butter, this is your foundation of your cake. If your butter is beaten well And as you can see, I started out in a very yellow color, in a very yellow color, and then it goes to become completely pale yellow. So that's when you know your butter is completely oxidized and aerated. Okay, let me just fix the situation with the camera. Hold on. Sorry guys, I have an iPad and it's some blurs. Okay, I'm back. And as you can see, I'm not eating. Till it's aerated. Now, when I'm adding my sugar, okay, so the sugar and the butter together incorporate, and it helps the butter incorporate more air into the recipe. So you'll see the butter getting more paler and more aerated as we go. If you have a wooden spoon, your batter would go from this from the previous thing to this, and you can add your eggs into this in this stage. If it's clumpy like this, you can add your eggs in this because it'd be really hard to like really incorporate air. Don't worry, it's just going to have a very how do you say it will incorporate air with the eggs. So don't worry, you'll see. And you'll see this is that your air, your butter and your sugar is completely incorporated, and it's formed this. So now I have my eggs over here. So I crack my eggs in advance, and I store them in an airtight. I mean, I cling wrap it so that there's no air going in and spoiling the eggs. I crack it in, and I added vanilla. So the vanilla I use is this particular brand, and it's one of the best in India. And I use only a teaspoon of it.
What's the brand name?
So the brand that I'm using is called Bush, and it's IFF. You get this in really small bottles in your grocery shops, and so it's not really hard to find. So yeah, I added a teaspoon of it, and if one thing I learned in my early baking was to invest in um, baking spoons and baking cups, so that you get your ingredients precise. Now, if you don't want to use these fancy spoons, you can use your tablespoon that the chota chamach, bada chamach, your tablespoon that you have at your home. But it won't be precise, but it's okay because this recipe is very forgiving. If you add a little bit of more soda, if you add a little more baking powder, it will not affect the overall outcome. So it's a very forgiving recipe, like I said. If I was using a wooden spoon, I would just go in like this and continuously just beat it. So if this would be my wooden spoon, I would just go in circles, no particular way, just getting my sugar and my butter incorporated. And since I'm using my blender, I'm gonna go in with pouring in my eggs slowly. Now, if you're doing this with the wooden spoon, you know one thing, I'm just gonna move on to this. I'm gonna leave this aside. I'm gonna make this recipe with just a wooden spoon. I'll use the recipe using a spatula so that you guys can, see the outcome of how it will be if you guys use a wooden spoon or even a whisk. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to pour in all of my eggs. You would put one egg at a time if you're using the hand blender. So yeah. So when you see your eggs, think about eggs in butter, they split. So you just got to keep on working with it. Don't freak out. There's nothing wrong that you did. It's just the qualities of the butter and the eggs. I mean, liquid and butter. So you're gonna have a very lumpy batter like this. Worry not. Just keep on whisking, or with your spatula, or your wooden spoon, or your whisk, your fork, whichever. Till you get a smooth batter like that. Okay. And now I'm gonna add in my bananas. So, like I said about the bananas, the more riper they are, the more delicious they have an outcome on your. It adds a more delicious flavor and more deeper flavor. And
Dino,
that's what I'm gonna.
repeat that.
Okay,
We
sure.
didn't hear properly.
Sorry. So when you're baking with bananas, the more the riper the bananas are. So today morning when I made the previous batch, I did wait for my bananas to. I mean, I bought it 5 days ago and it became nice and black, and that's the best when it comes to baking. And if you have your bananas very raw, don't worry about it. You can actually put them in the oven or your microwave for around two. So if you're putting in the microwave, you would put it for about, you would peel them off and put them in the microwave for about 1 minute. And if you're going to put it in your oven, you can put it for 10 minutes, complete like that, and then you will get them black and more ripe. So, okay, so my crumble is done. I'm going to get out of the oven so that it doesn't burn. I'll be right back. So I've got the crumble out of the oven. It should look like a flat cookie. And I'm going to put this in, I'm going to put it aside for it to cool down before we can start on the next process. And before I cool it down, I'm just going to aggravate it, basically get the crumble together. So if you don't have, if you want to skip this step out completely, it's fine and it's totally okay. But this will just add a little flavor to your final product. It will make it really moist. It will just give flavor and crunch. And that's your crumble. Okay, getting back to the recipe. So when it comes to these bananas, again, they're room temperature ripe. And I would want to get rid of the top parts of the bananas because that's exposed. So I'm just going to cut that out. Put it in there. And if you, another baking tip, if you have eggshells or banana peels, don't throw them away. You can use them for planting. I mean, it's not a baking tip, but you can put this into your soil. It's great fertilizers. If you have your banana like this, don't worry about it. It's just ripe and you can use it into your baking. Okay, I'm gonna put this in the blender. I will be back. I'll put this in the blender for about 2 minutes, and I'll be back. So another baking tip is to clean as you go, so that you don't have, when you end your baking, it's hassle free. Your ingredient, your everything is cleaned as you clean as you work. Um, and another tip is to have a separate cloth for your hands and for your tools, and a separate cloth for your surfaces. Okay. So when you blend the banana, it's going to turn out become really black and even brown. So don't worry about it. Just work with it, and you can definitely use this in your recipe. So when you incorporate your banana, and if you don't have a blender at home, use the dal wala, the thing that you use to crush dal. You can use that so that you can have so you have banana, or you can even use a fork to mash it. It would just have lumps in your batter, which is totally okay because it just have a huge flavor in your uh, final product. So here we go. I'm just going to mix my banana with my uh, banana with my batter. So now at this point, if you have your banana split your batter, don't worry. When you add in your dry ingredients, it'll actually come together. So you'll see it split like this. Okay. So just before I finish, now I'm going to get my dry ingredients ready. So one golden rule in baking, at least, is when you're using a dry ingredients, always use a sieve to get your ingredients, fine. I mean, so that if any lumps or any something is gone through, I mean, like any impurity which is there, it will catch it through the sieve. So I'm adding my flour, and you'll see as I sift my flour, you'll see lumps. That's gonna get, that will go away. Look, the lumps, and they just go through. Okay. Now I'm gonna add my dry ingredients, and I didn't measure them on purpose in advance. It's because I want to show you guys how to, measure out your dry ingredients. So, I mean, at least your raising agents. Now, when it comes to baking powder and baking soda, precision is important. But with this recipe, if it's here and there, it's okay because it's a very forgiving recipe. So I'm going to use about half a teaspoon of baking soda and baking powder. So this is my baking soda, baking powder. And if you see the consistency of baking powder, it's like a powder, like talcum powder, but baking soda is more grittier. And when you're measuring dry ingredients, don't just scoop and shake. You're going to have more, it's going to be dense and it's going to add more to it than you should. So what you would do is take it out, use a knife. I'm using an offset spatula and scoop, and dump. Same thing with my baking soda. Scoop, scrape, and then dump. I'm going to add cinnamon to this. Cinnamon just elevates your flavor. If you don't have cinnamon, if you don't want to add cinnamon and you don't like cinnamon, feel free to leave this out. But I'm telling you, this recipe with cinnamon just elevates it and makes it amazing. Another important ingredient in all our baking is remember to incorporate salt. Now, it's very like an oxymoron because salt doesn't go on baking, but it does actually. It actually elevates your flavor, elevates your um, like it just gives this huge punch to the sugar, and it just makes it much better. So salt is so important in all your baking ingredients. I mean, in all of your baking. If you have recipes that your grandmother or your grandfather has passed down to you and doesn't have salt, add salt to it, and you will see a huge difference. Clean as you go, so that you have surface area to work with.
Okay,
Okay,
Dino,
again,
I would like to stop you over there. If you
sure,
could just give us a little rewind of whatever you have done so far, because we've gone
sure,
live on Facebook now. So just explain briefly about whatever you have done.
sure. So guys, I mean, we're making a banana loaf. So what we have done is I pre-measured all my ingredients. I made a crumble before this. I'll quickly show you. So I made a crumble. Look at that. That's just a crumble. It's crunchy, it's delicious with butter, sugar, and flour. To make this crumble, it was very simple. All I
How
did
did you
was,
make the crumble? Do you want to explain?
sure. To make a crumble, all I did was I took a bowl, I added my flour, my sugar, and my butter, and then I just incorporated it. I just mixed it together, and I put it flat on a tray and let it bake for 10 minutes. After it came out, it became flat, very thin, and just so that it has to be a crumble, I just like, aggravated it so that it ends up being this crunchy crumble. For, for the banana cake itself, the banana loaf, I whipped my butter up. So basically, I took a whisk and I just whisked it together just to aerate. Then I added in my sugar, and then I added in my butter, sorry, my eggs, and and then I I bet the butter and the sugar together, and then my eggs, and then the vanilla and the banana. So the basic, uh, kind of like with basic baking, you basically the golden rule is to beat your sugar and butter for like at least 2 minutes. So if you see many of the recipes, you basically beat your butter and sugar, and then you add your eggs and then your vanilla. So that's basically what I've done. Now on the side, I mixed my flour and my my raising agents, which is my baking soda, my baking powder, my cinnamon, and my salt, and then I sifted it together, and I got this into a bowl. So after you sift it, you want to whisk it. So again, if you don't have this, feel free to use a fork, use a spoon. Um, you don't need to invest in fancy things if you're going to do home baking, but do invest in measuring spoons and measuring cups so that you have precision. Okay. I also in advance made some buttermilk. So what I did was I took 1 part curd and 2 part milk and I mixed it together and I got buttermilk. Okay. So you can make buttermilk at home. So also another way to make buttermilk is taking a cup of milk and adding in a tablespoon of vinegar. So for every cup of milk, you would add 1 tablespoon of vinegar, and that becomes your buttermilk. If you have to add more, if you have a bigger quantity, you would just double the recipe or triple the recipe accordingly. Now, this same recipe can be used into different stuff. So you can make it a loaf like this, or you want to be extra fancy, you can put it into your banana muffin trays. So you have these small muffin trays that come. You can use it in that, or you can use the same recipe into putting it in a cake pan and then make you a beautiful cake. You can actually put drizzle on top and you can cut for birthdays. You can use the same thing for a bun. It's easily, it releases off your baking products, off your baking trays easily. So you can use it for a bun tray too. I don't see where I left it. So I think it's inside, but that's what you would do. So over here, I have my wet ingredients, which is basically my buttermilk, and my dry ingredients and the batter. So I want to incorporate this into two steps. And the reason that we do that into two steps is because you want to build your flour up. So you basically want to activate that gluten in the flour so that you have a stretchier dough and you have a more bounce to it. If you can see my banana cake, it's very spongy. Okay. So the reason it's spongy is because one, I bet my sugar and my butter for a long time. And also we wanted to incorporate, you want to get the gluten to get activated in your baking. So I'm gonna add this in two steps and then alternate it with the buttermilk. So half of the flour, okay, and then I'm gonna whisk it, mix it. One myth about baking is that you have to, use only one direction, but that's a myth. You can go any direction, clockwise, anti-clockwise. It doesn't really affect your batter. And then I'm gonna pour in my buttermilk, mix. Like I said, when you added the banana, your batter would split, but you added your ingredients and it will come together. And then I've added my final amount of flour, mix. Oops. So when you add buttermilk, it reacts to the soda that you added, and it gives you a very spongy texture. But when it comes to baking powder, when it comes to baking powder, you use liquids to activate the baking powder and heat. But when it comes to soda, you need something acidic. So the buttermilk and the acidity in the buttermilk would activate the soda, and you'll see when you're mixing itself, the age of the sodas reacting to the buttermilk, and you'll see it forming bubbles. That's basically the air escaping. Finally, I'm adding my buttermilk, the final thing of the final amount, and then I'm gonna whisk. I mean mix spatula, and that's your batter. Okay. Also, when you have all your ingredients in advance prepared and measured out, there's no chance of missing out an ingredient. So that you have all of your ingredients in there. So you see, after my batter is done, always make sure that I go to the if you go to the when you're making your batter, you want to go to the ends of the bowl down so that any ingredient that doesn't get incorporated, it gets you forcefully incorporate it. See, I'm scraping down this whole side. Okay, I'm gonna do one thing now. I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go preheat my oven. Now, if you don't preheat your oven in advance, it's okay. You just got to wait, just put this aside, increase your oven to the highest temperature, and then put it to the desired temperature, and it'll get hot really quick. If you, unlike me, if you have a really fancy, a fancy oven, you can just put it in for 5 minutes and it'll get hot immediately. So before I start pouring this into my batter, into my molds, I'm gonna quickly go preheat the oven. Okay, I'm back. So Um, Over here, I have banana mold, sorry, loaf molds. So the reason I like these loaf molds is because they are super, like you can cut them into like slices. You can put some butter, you can put some jam, and have it as like bread basically. But keeping in mind this recipe is extremely like it's sweet enough. You don't want to add like more butter and jam. But I like jam and my butter on my banana bread. So yeah, I'm pure that way. So when it comes to measuring out your, I mean, pouring your ingredients into three different molds, you would want to do it using a scale, like a scale like this. But since I don't have, since I'm pretty sure that not many of you invested into baking as a professional, so I'm guessing you would not have a scale. And so one way to do it is to eyeball it. So what I would do is I would put, keeping in mind I have to do three, I would do three, and then I'm trying to see if I could like show you how I'm putting it, but I guess I can't. So I'm just gonna, without being messy, I'm gonna try putting this into molds. Now this recipe gives you about 1 dozen banana muffins, three molds, and one nice 1 kg cake. So if you want to make this as your friend's birthday cake, you want to make this as muffins, you have 1 dozen. If you want to do a loaf, you have three. If you want to make a bun, make two bun pans. So if you see that your pan is, if your batter is not equally distributed like mine, what you can do is just take
We can't see
the
the
spatula.
third.
Mold. Okay, let me see. Let me see how to fix that out. So yeah, one, two, and three. So what I would do is this one, like this one is fine. The middle one is fine. The first one kind of got under less of it. So I would just use my spatula and quickly scoop and put it. And so yeah. Don't worry if it's got to the size of the baking tray. Your anyway, as it rises in the oven, it anyway will catch that. Okay. So that I don't have to put them all individually into the oven. I have a baking tray over here. So I'm going to bake this for about 30 minutes. So you, depending on your oven, it will take from anywhere between 25 minutes to 30 minutes. Keeping in mind, you can use the same recipe in your microwaves. You can put this in your microwaves for anything between 2 minutes to about 3 minutes, depending on the how high your voltage is of your microwave. If you don't have a microwave and an oven, this is a beautiful recipe you can make pancakes with. So I would just have a really hot pan, pour some butter so that it doesn't stick to the pan, and I would bake it, and I would pour the batter in, flip it, and then I would make pancakes with it. So, and if you don't want to make pancakes with it, you can put it in the cooker. So if you want to put it into the cooker, you would just have the cooker, you would pour some water about an inch thick. You would put a baking mold upside down, and then you would put you put the cake on top, and then you would put it into the cooker for about 2 minutes. Sorry, for two whistles. And if it's undercooked, put it for another whistle, and if it's and that's about it. So I'm going to go put this in the oven for about 30 minutes and I'll be back. If you're like me and you're really organized, I made a batch in advance. So like I said, right, cleaning as you go is so important because then you won't have too much to end with. Okay. So I have this thing called a bench scraper. You can get this in any baking shop for 10 rupees. And this is one of the tools I've used to clean my benches. It's super helpful, as you can see. I'm quickly just cleaning it. Like I said, having a different separate box for your hands and your tools would be really helpful. Okay, so now I'm going to show you guys how to make a quick glaze. Um, so over here, I have a bowl full of icing sugar. Now, icing sugar is different from from grinded sugar or powdered sugar. So you can find this easily in any baking shop, and it's come to a point in life where even grocery shops you can find icing sugar. It's one of the most simplest recipes that I've learned. It basically just needs sugar and so since I've been so like confident about using a fork, I'm actually going to show you using a fork on making this glaze. So you would start adding a tablespoon of milk at a time, and this is when you would even add your flavoring. Now, if you don't, if you just like me, you want a simple glaze, this is what you would do. But I want to add some vanilla, so I'm going to add about a teaspoon of that. Vanilla. Now, this is where you can customize your glaze. You can add cocoa powder into this and make it a chocolate glaze. You can add, cinnamon into it. You can make it a cinnamon glaze. So, yeah, starting off with, I'm just going to mix it. So what's first going to happen is going to become a lump. It's going to start lumping up in the middle, which is totally fine. So that's when you know that you need more sugar. More milk. Like I said, tablespoon at a time, so that you don't end up with too thin of a glaze. Forks are the most useful tool when it comes to baking. If you don't have a whisk, it can really imitate a whisk. Like I said, it'll come together quick. Tablespoon at a time, because I don't want a too thin glaze. Now, if you add too much milk and your glaze becomes way too thin, and that does happen when it comes to baking. It does happen sometimes. Measurements go off, and you can make a very thin glaze. I like my glaze; it's very nice and thick. So if it does go thin, so what you can do is you can quickly just add in a little more of the icing sugar, and you would save your glaze. Look, that's nice and thin. That's the consistency I wanted it to be. So depending on you, if you want a thin glaze, you would add more milk. And if you want a thicker glaze, I don't think so anything thicker than this would really work. So this is how thin you want it. So look at that. Okay. So now to now just to like how you would incorporate all the ingredients together. So I just showed you guys how to make the banana loaf. So over here I have my glaze. Like I said, the fork is one of the best tools when it comes to baking. Okay, no thing. I feel like it's a bit too thick. So I'm gonna add in about half a tablespoon. And I know the measurements of the glaze. I used 200 grams of butter, which is 1 cup, and I used about 4 tablespoons of milk. Okay. Now to set up the cake, my crumble, my vanilla glaze, and the banana loaf. So I'm going to just pour. I'm going to see the. So I'm going to pour a banana glaze. And this glaze, you can use it for donuts. You can use the same glaze for cupcakes. You can use the same glaze for pancakes. I love making this glaze for pancakes. So yeah, this is my glaze. I've glazed my banana loaf. And over here, my crumble. So my crumble, I think, as you can see, it's a bit too thick. I was going to make it a little more thinner. So what the crumble does, it just gives you a lot more flavor. It gives it crunch, and it gives it, a different. It gives texture to the banana loaf. If you guys have any questions, you guys can feel free to ask me.
Yeah. Uh,
So I'm
the
going to
first
quickly do it.
question, the first question that we have is explain the tattoos on your hands.
Okay, definitely, I will. Let me just quickly finish this and we go with it. Okay, so this tattoo is a really funny outcome. My sister said she wanted a tattoo and she said that she wanted somebody to come with her. So I said, okay, fine, I'm gonna come with you, and we went together and we got this tattoo. So this basically means God is greater than my highs and lows. I think that's one thing about life. There's highs and lows, whether you like it or not. And there are times where things come by surprise. You can't count on. You can't just expect. Things. It's very unexpected. Uh, Traumas. Things just come in life. It's just one scary life out there. And so I got this tattoo to remind me is that no matter whatever my life offers me, like it might be scary, it might be just the most, the most unexpected thing, but God is always with me. And I'm super, super enthusiastic about it. And I love God, I love Christ. So yeah. The other tattoo I have over here is basically I chose to. It's basically it's basically a semicolon and a Christ. So basically, an author ended up a novel using a semicolon. That basically meant the story is not over. Sometimes in life when you just hit that ditch, you might feel like your story is over, but it's not. And that semicolon is to remind me that end of the day, I'm just gonna go rinse my hands and come and be back. And guys, that's the thing, guys. If you guys, when your crumble is out of the oven, that's when you would, activate it enough so that you have not these big huge chunks. But these huge chunks also give texture.
Mm.
So, like I was saying, Jesus has got my life under control. This one is basically a bird, and it's a swallow. And this bird is basically to remind me that, you know, this is one bird that only heads towards sea. So when life, you might feel lost in life, always remember that there's always land on the other side. Yeah, I have meanings to a lot of my tattoos. So yeah, that's my tattoos. Oh, I also have an anchor, which is basically anchor for my soul. Yeah.
Wow. Thanks for that. Yeah, what is a primary aspect that each one of us as beginners have to keep in mind while baking?
Pardon, can you repeat the question?
The primary elements or primary aspects that each one of us have to bear in mind while we as beginners start baking.
Okay, the prime thing I think is that you're gonna make mistakes while baking. Okay, there's gonna be times where your recipe just fails. Sometimes there'll be times where it might just not go according to plan, but that's okay. And keep baking, keep having fun with it. But is to always be precise with your measurements. Take a cup. You don't know how each milliliters and grams are not the same. So if your recipe calls for like 30 grams, it doesn't mean it means 30 ml, right? So 30 ml of milk is not the same thing as 30 grams of milk. So it's very important that you measure out everything in advance and know your ingredients. So if you start baking, learn theory behind what you're baking. Know your like flour. It has gluten. When it touches water, it activates that gluten. So if you want your cakes to be soft, you don't activate it too much. You need to know your baking soda, your baking powder. You need to know what activates those. So basically, have a run through of why you're doing what when it comes to baking, so that you don't make mistakes. And also, one more aspect would be is definitely your heating of your oven is your temperature and your timing is very important. So you can have under baked goods if you don't have right um, amount of time. And if your temperatures are too high, you can have a burnt top and a very like undercooked center. And yeah, that's a few things that you'll keep in mind.
Yeah, that's nice. So I want to point back that question that one of the tip that you said, ki, know what you're doing and why you're doing. So we are a little curious to know what keeps you in love with this profession and with this passion of yours.
Sure. The reason that I'm so passionate about baking and I love doing what I do is because I think it just lets me, art. I always loved art growing up. I love being creative, expressing my art. And I think while I grew up, I realized that I love to make art I can eat. So there's the art, baking is one art you can eat. And I think I got inspired by this quote: "Orange is the only color you can eat." And it just basically like blew my mind. Like that's the only color you can eat. There's no other color you can eat. And I was like, I'm gonna make art that will actually I can eat. And so that is why I think I kept baking passion. And then also when you serve something so delicious to your friends and your family, when they eat this, they just the happiness that comes on their face, like this is delicious. It's so rewarding, when I think when you grow up in a community and church, I think nothing brings people together like food, and I think that's why I always thought if I could make food and serve it to people and encourage them, that's the best I can. That's all. That'll just make me happy. So I think that's why I've started baking is because I really love serving people and encouraging them through my. Yeah.
That's inspiring. So why did you choose more niche market of pastries?
Um, I think when it comes to the baking industry, there's not many profits. Financially, it's not a very secure job because sometimes you can get orders, sometimes you cannot get. Sometimes you won't get orders, and so I think for me to just continue doing what I'm doing is because I think the over time when my name is like developed, it will eventually lead to profits every day, and I think that's why baking is. I think that's why I think I stuck to it and I chose this as my career. But it is very challenging at times when it comes to like financial backups. And so it's a slow build up. So yeah.
So, so what's your vision? What's your life's vision?
I think with baking, I'm not a very ambitious person in general. Hold on, let me switch cameras. Mute this and unmute this. And like I was saying, I think I was not very passionate when it comes to um, I'm not a very ambitious person in general. I'm happy just earning a few thousands. So my future goal would be with baking is at least the community to benefit from it. My church community, my family, my friends, my voice is echoing. Hold on, let me see. Is this better? Echoing? Is it still echoing?
Go
Is it
ahead. Go
better?
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So is this better? Okay, so I think for me, what was the question again? Ambition. So I'm not very ambitious as a person, but I do want to create content on a daily basis. So I want, if you check out my Instagram page, you'll see how creative I am. Um, I really love, I think in terms of, wedding cakes. So I want to be established as a wedding cake designer in my community. And for I think people to know that this is what he does and he's good at it. So I think if that's all I could do, I'd be very very happy and grateful. So yeah.
Yeah. So out of all the Zoom sessions I've done, you are the one of, I mean, I think you are the youngest person. So being a youngster with a lot of passion, with a lot of talent, I want to ask this question to you. What is one, how are you different from the others, and what is one aspect that the others are missing on?
Whoa, 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 whoa. Oops. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bring the
What's happening?
devices away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Clear.
Okay. So what puts me apart from being young? I think the problem lies is I think is people are very career focused and ambitious out there. I think having a heart of content. I think also just being content with what I have has made me become make me stand apart. And I think everybody has this kind of like a box where it says this is the absolute and this is what works, and everybody's like pursuing masters and pursuing degrees, but nobody's passion following your passion. And I think what would me sets me apart is that I follow my passion. And I think it was because I think I read this quote very early on in my. I love reading, by the way, so you'll be hearing me quoting stuff. But it said, "Do what you love, and you'll never work a day." So I love what I'm doing, and I never work a day. It's just having fun every day and making a living. So it's quite rewarding.
Don't you think it's also stressful?
Um, yes, it can get stressful at times. It does. I'm guessing this is my camera that people can see me from. Is that it?
We can't see your face. Just uh,
Okay, this is the camera.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I was saying about uh, um, it's stressful. I agree. It's very stressful at times where you get really overwhelmed. Like, what am I doing? Will this really pay off in the long run? And I guess knowing that I know it's very religious, but I think knowing that my father is the creator of the universe and he will, always provide me with my needs, and just knowing that, I think I can just take a deep breath and be like, but God's in control, and you do what you love and you serve Him and be, just be faithful to Him. There's always going to be. Is my thing just turned off?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think it just got locked. We back?
Yes.
So let me go check out the banana bread comes.
Yeah, sure.
Um, it's on track. Who was saying something? Yeah,
Stress.
yeah, it does get stressful, but I'm at peace knowing that whatever's meant for me won't miss me. Whatever misses me is not meant for me. And yeah, I'm confident that God's going to guide me through all of it.
So, what is one message that you want to leave to youngsters and your fellow age youngsters?
Wow, I've never been asked this question. Forget the mute. Hello, can you hear me? Good. Like I was saying, I think one thing I want to leave my fellow mates with um, is definitely seek the kingdom first. All that you need, God will provide. And early on in my journey, I kept this as my foundation. With my baking journey, with my career, with my faith, with what I do, I always put that as my foundation. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to figure out what's happening when it's not working out. Um, and I put that as a foundation. I think I've seen it paid off. And I would just say is follow your passion over career. Don't let what people say affect you. Because I think when I went for, at least I remember when I met you, this is like, you always said, don't let what people say affect you, and don't let your inner demons affect you. So I would say the same thing to people is don't let. I'm
I'm
so
so
sorry.
mute the other one, Dino.
Okay. Is it fine?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was saying is don't let your inner demons affect you. Do what you love, and don't listen to people when they criticize you. Be happy with what you do, and because if you look for criticism, it's everywhere. But if you look for encouragement, you will find it everywhere too. So yeah, look for the smallest things that make you happy. Be grateful for it, and do what you're doing. And before you know it, you will be blessed. So yeah, that's what I would want to leave.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So, how long is the cake gonna take us?
So I think we're done. It's just going to take us about 5 minutes, and I'll show you guys how to check if a banana cake. I mean, if any of your recipes are done. I'm figuring out if I can take this there, or if okay, let me just take my phone there. That would be better. Better. Okay. So this is my baking house. I only specifically designed it for my baking. So as you can see, it's done. Okay, almost done. Oh, is that? So one way to check is to always have baking skewers around you. If you don't have a baking skewer, you don't have one of these, use the big. And let me find myself a glove put it on. I think I should call my gloves. here. Okay, so only to realize that I forgot to unmute myself. So I was saying is one way to check if your baking is done is to have a skewer or a toothpick like this. And oh, how am I going to do this? Okay, this would need at least 2 more minutes to 5 more minutes, but usually the goal is okay. It's actually done. Okay, no, it's not done. So you'd want the skewer to come out clean, but if it doesn't, just put it in for 5 more minutes and it'd be done.
Cool.
So
What have you been doing during COVID? How were you keeping yourself occupied?
So the beginning of COVID, I just kept myself occupied by reading a couple of books, playing PUBG, watching Netflix. But the most important time, I think COVID has definitely been a blessing because I think it helped me focus on my family a lot. So when you are forced to be with family, you kind of resolve issues. So I think there's so many things that as a family we need to work on. And I think because of the COVID situation, I think it brought us all together so much more closer. We become so much more closer, we become more loving and understanding towards each other because of the forced time we spent together. But I think the oven has just got put off. I'm going to put it on again.
Sure.
So we've been playing family games together. We've been playing board games. We have Pichareka, we have Cluedo, we have Uno, and that's been very, very bonding. We've been watching movies together, series together. I haven't got really much to bake because I only bake on order basis. But because there wasn't many people ordering and people were just very hesitant about what's happening around us, so I couldn't bake for a long, long time, and hence I had to keep postponing this. I'm so sorry about that too, but and that's why I think it took a while for me to actually get back onto my feet with baking. But yeah, that's what I've been doing, focusing on myself more, and yeah, it's been good.
Do you think self-investment is essential?
Oh yeah, as a chef, I can tell you, as a chef, as a human being, I can tell you, self-investment is so important. It's so important to invest in yourself. Self-care, self-care can be physical and spiritual and emotional. You guys sometimes need a detox, and just sometimes it be physical detox, but even sometimes it even means like, emotional detox. And the best emotional detox I can think of is basically talking to people and getting all the gunk that's within out. And I think also to invest on a good skincare routine. It's so important to invest on yourself, like just take yourself out and get some fresh air, treat yourself with good ice cream, go and buy yourself a new pair of clothes. It's so important to self-care and self-invest in yourself, because end of the day there's nobody who can love you the way you can love yourself. And if you don't find the strength to love yourself, then you kind of like missing all the like the whole entire point of even being a Christian. Because I remember like this one scripture I was hearing was, it says, "Love your neighbors as you love yourself." So it's important that I think emphasis on loving yourself and investing on yourself, and it's definitely important that you take time to invest on yourself.
Yeah. I remember you contemplating suicide at some point in time. So I think it's very essential at this time and era to hear your story. So would you want to share a little bit about what happened
Sure.
and how
I'll
did you overcome?
give me a second. Let me go check at the cakes because I don't want to get them burnt because effort. You want to keep an eye on them. So if you have a skewer and you've used it and you just keep it clean and then go check it out. I'll be back. Give me a second.
Baking does take a lot of time. It is going to take 2 more minutes. It'll be out in about 2 more minutes. But yes, definitely, I would love to share my story. So the reason that I contemplated suicide, I think, is a lot of things that build up to it. And I think the reason that I contemplated suicide was, I think, not taking care of myself and thinking too much about what people thought of me. So personally, when I was 12 years old, I got sexually abused, and it went on. This happened for about 2 years, and for me, I think that was one very initial trauma that affected my view on myself. I felt used. I felt like I'm nothing after that. And then I got bullied a lot in school. A lot of times people told me that I'm going to be nothing in life, that I'm going to be a failure. I'm never going to be successful in anything I do, because I was very bad at education. I was not the, um, I never got an A plus. I never got a B plus. The max, the best score in my life right now is when I got a C. No, I got a B plus in maths, and that's the only best I've had. And so I think, when people tell you that you're gonna be a failure and you see it happening, it kind of makes you not love yourself and makes you think, what is the purpose in life? And I think that's the 80%. I think that's the reason why people contemplate about suicide, is because they don't find purpose in living. At least for me, I didn't find purpose in living. I didn't find purpose in. I felt like no one could love me after what happened with my abuse and my growing up with being a feeling like a failure, with the bullying in school, and I think a lot of physical abuse by my teachers as well. They slapped me a lot. They hit me a lot, and it made me feel like I'm going to just always be this punching bag for people. And then my best friend, he stopped, like my best friend and I, we stopped talking about 4 years ago, and that kind of drive me to commit suicide too. And I tried giving up my life for about five times. And it's not a proud thing I'm saying, like it's a good, guess what, I did this as an achievement. But I think it's because of how serious I was about it. And I think, it kind of like, when you went, from an audience point of view, it might seem like that's such a small thing, but what is true to you and your feeling is true to you is true to you. What something happened to you is your pain and it's your trauma, and nobody can see otherwise. And I think it's officially done. The baking is the banana bread is done. I could get it out, and then we'll continue talking. I'll just be back. So these are out of the oven, and the one way to know if you're good is your stuff is baked is to be golden brown like this, firm to touch, and then you put a skewer or toothpick, and it will come out clean. There won't be any crumbs. It won't be any batter. It'll just be firm and it's ready. You can put your glaze now. You can put your glaze when it's cool. It's up to you. So yeah, that's the banana bread, and you would finish it off by putting some glaze and then the crumble. The crumble adds texture, flavor, and a crunch to it. So definitely try it with the crumble. It's a little extra effort, but it's worth it. Yeah. What was I saying was.
Wow. Yeah, you were talking about how you were abused and how your friend left you, and then how you felt very rejected, and you tried committing suicide 5 times. And yeah, continue. I'll let you continue there.
And I think that's when I think I got into counseling, and it's very important. Sometimes people say counseling is not important, like you're psychotic or you're mental because you go for counseling, but it's not true, guys. I think it's very important that you actually go for counseling if you need it. It's so important to reach out for help, because it's not wrong to actually ask for help. When you're sinking, you need somebody to help to get you out of that situation. So I went for counseling. I went for counseling for almost 4 years. I think it took a lot for me because I think my sense of self belief was affected, and I think to change, when you are your worst critic, it kind of affects your growth, and it affects your self belief, and it did. I kept criticizing myself for the smallest things and the smallest mistakes I've made. When it came to baking, also, I think there were times where I made big mistakes and I never forgave myself about it. And I think it took time for me to forgive myself. It took time for me to just put myself into people's hands who could take care of me. And that's when I became so important for me. It's when it became so important for me to go for training for counseling, because I knew that if I could, if I'm going through something like this, there are people out there who are going through worse, or they could even be going through what I'm going through. And that's when I met Crystalite, and that's when she also gave me a very important, guys. This is the one of the best advice that I got from Crystalite, and I think this is something that has really stuck to me ever since. Is the more importance, and the more you absorb into, like, saying I have a mental disorder, or you have anxiety or depression, you kind of make yourself believe that things are worse than what it is. So even if it's not real, you can actually feel like it's real. So I think for me, it was also for me to not put myself into that box and say this is what I have, but to actually put myself out of that box and say I'm so much more than what that. I'm not just my anxiety. I am not just my abuse. I am not just my depression. I am not just my bullying. I'm so much more than that. And I think that is what I had to do. And that's something that's very stuck to myself. Sometimes when I, focus on my spiritual journey or my journey in my mental health, I say, I think I am not my failures. I am not what I feel right now. There's so much more to me than I can imagine, and that is why I think I think I love what she said, and I think it's stuck to me ever since. So I'm very grateful for that, Crystalite, and hence today I'm here because of you.
That's a kind of you, but it's a whole lot of journey that you ran through and you rallied up by yourself. And we really applause for all the efforts, investment that you've done in yourself, which is very important. And I think most of us miss that, and that's why we kind of lose the track of who we are, where we are, what we are. And yeah, that's a great profound message that you've shared with people. But then I would like to pause and ask this one direct question. So for people that are contemplating suicide, what would you suggest?
Wow. I think is um, reach out to somebody, stop, drop, and get yourself to somebody that can help you out. Stop everything that you have contemplated and go talk to someone. It's so important that you get somebody's help. Guys, if it's something that you're dealing with, uh, if you're contemplating suicide, get help, guys. It might seem like you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable situation, but I'm telling you that will save your life, because even when you're thinking that thoughts of like there's nothing, this everything is a mess, there's nothing that can fix it, that is just the feeling at that moment. And it's so important that you reach out, because you will get the help you require. It may be a trusted friend, it could be a trusted family, it might be a counselor, it might be your sister, your brother, but get talk to somebody, because it's a very fragile situation. And if you don't get this, if you don't like if you it's important that you talk to someone, because if you feel like you can't help yourself, the other person will help you. And that's what I did. I got my counselors involved, and that's something that I did, was to talk to people about it. I'm like, this is what is happening right now, this is what I'm contemplating. And I was at the railway station, I was going to jump off I'm not telling you what I did, but I called my best friend and I was telling her I am at a point and I'm just going to jump off. And she said, don't overthink it. Take a step back, go home and get some rest. Talk to me when you feel better tomorrow. And I think that's one thing that I also saw in the Bible, where it said, when Elijah went to commit suicide, I think some food and some rest really just changed perspective in things. And I think that's something that you guys also can do. And I think if you feel contemplating suicide, get something to eat, get some rest, talk to someone, and you'll see the outcome of it.
Wow, that's really helpful. I think such practical steps that each one of us have to follow. Yeah. So, do you want to finish off with the cake, and then we will have your signing comments?
You want me to cut the cake? Is that what you want me to do, or
Yeah,
what?
sure. Maybe this one that you put the glaze upon.
Okay, cool. So, to demold it, you just pull from each side, and you can transfer it to a tray. I would prefer glazing it out. If I'm going to give this off to a gift, I would cling wrap it and give it up just like this. But if I'm gonna use it at home use, I would not glaze it in the pan because it's really messy to get out. I'll be right back. I'll get a chopping board and a knife.
If any of you have any baking questions, you're more than welcome to ask.
Yes, please do.
Auntie, thank you for joining. Finally, I think you've had internet issues.
Guys, the super moist cake.
There is audio problem.
Okay,
So-
okay. Auntie, if you have any baking related questions, please put them in the chat so that I can ask him. And you can follow the link on FB so that you also have the full video.
Yeah, I'll check in that and anything I'll post.
Yeah, sure, Auntie.
Okay, so this is ouch, hot. Okay, so guys, this is the banana cake, the outcome final outcome of it. Turn on this so that you guys can see. So this is what we made, and it's gonna cut into a slice.
Yo, happy birthday.
Thank you. I mean, it's not my birthday, but thank you.
Yeah, but still.
Okay. So guys, as you can see, super.
Whenever it is, advance happy birthday.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can see it's super spongy.
itu meme
It's super spongy. The glaze and seeps through and makes it really moist. The crumble just adds crunch to it, and this is something that you guys should try.
Whoa.
We had a moon festival yesterday, so we had cakes.
Can I have this recorded video so that I
Yes,
can
Auntie.
see from the
Yes,
beginning?
yes. Yeah.
Okay, guys, this recipe is from an academy. So when I was in training, this recipe was given by an MOF. So an MOF is like the greatest achievement for a chef, and he passed on this recipe to academy, and that's why this is so good. It's so amazing, and you won't get this recipe off the internet. It's very hard to find the recipe off the internet because these are MOFs who have done it. So you have to follow the Instagram pages to get recipes like this. But I got lucky because I got this from the academy. And guys, it's a steal, guys. Try the recipe out. It's delicious. These are professional recipes that are fail proof and they're delicious in its own. The glaze and the crumble is delicious.
Sure. Yeah, I think we will try and maybe reach out to you. So share the recipe contents so that we can post adding to this video and then see how it goes. Okay. Thank you so much, Dino, for doing this for us. It's been such a joy hearing your story and hearing what you do and why you do, how you do it. So, what would be your signing off comments for all of us in general or in specific?
In general, for everyone, is always have time for yourself and put time and effort into some passion and hobby, and it pays off. If it's not for a career or for a for financial backup, but if it's something for that gives you happiness and joy, do it. Don't think twice. Find time for hobbies, take time for yourself, and always just do what you love, because end of the day, that's the best. It's very rewarding. So I would say enjoy what you're doing.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Signing off with Chef Dino. See you again.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Finally, you could make it on.